All right, we are in the studio, aka my dining room table. And my goal here is to spend probably about half an hour making one composition that would be a good fit for the week one assignment. I've got a bunch of materials here, so I'm going to get started. The themes I'm thinking about are control and chaos and order. I've already made sure to look those up and think about them, do some reflection, and as I gathered materials, made sure to grab things that I think would lend themselves to compositions that relate to those themes. So I'm going to get started. So as I'm going, I'm just working pretty intuitively here, pulling from my materials, seeing what goes good together. And I'm probably going to end up making several compositions, maybe variations on this one. Maybe I'll, scrap everything and start all over. And that's what I'd recommend doing for you as well. Don't feel like you have to do this sort of all in one take. I usually find that you'll have better experience doing something like this, making a few shorter compositions rather than spending all of your time on one singular one. So, one of the things I'm noticing here is things are fairly flat. Everything's on the table. And I think that could work well, to sort of photograph from above. But what I would like is maybe to get some more sort of like dimensionality to it. And I could do that either by sort of tilting it if I had like a drafting table and maybe put some things in front of it. I think I might try to sort of like stack things above because what's happening right now is like there's this big glob right here that's sort of dominating everything, and I want to break that up a little bit more. So this is cool. I have this little piece of glass, and I can use this almost as like a little sub composition, like a little window that's still showing through what's underneath, but I can put stuff on top of it. And in fact, I have this jar of Jingle Bells. Oh no. This is just as fun as it looks. So a lot of these materials are just things that I've had laying around. Some really great places to go include there's a place called the Scrap Box in Ann Arbor that sells all sorts of weird. I don't even know how to describe it. It's like extra things from factories and places that make things. So they'll have things like this, just weird little paper cutouts, and you can just buy it by the bag full. I've also got a stack of old magazines, some fabric, some cut up prints from old projects, an old wasp's nest. And I'm trying to kind of take a mixed approach between just sort of freeform grabbing materials and building in order or chaos or control in terms of the way I treat them, but then also having some things that are sort of already structured like that, like these sort of little grids of dots that are already very structured, or like the wasp nest, that's already a very structured thing. So some things that sort of either symbolize and or embody structure or order, and then kind of balancing those out against chaos in terms of the way I'm organizing things. And really, in terms of material sources for this, you can use whatever you want. The only real restriction is, no images that you've downloaded from the internet. But if you have snapshots, old family photos, if you have things of your own that you want to print out, that could be really good material. And you can sort of see so far everything that I'm doing is very non-figurative, so I don't really have any, human shapes or figures in here. I might do something with, my hands or inserting my body like physically into this composition when I go to photograph it. I haven't quite decided yet. I'm actually really enjoying being able to see this camera view from above. It's very nice because I can sort of see the whole composition, and regardless of sort of what scale you're doing this on, it's important to be able to sort of like step back from it and look at things overall. So don't just get too focused in, very much like doing a painting or a drawing. Take some steps back and see what's happening. I can see, again, I think because I started with that sort of weird tapestry at the base, that's just sort of like sucking up compositionally most of the energy of the image. If I were assuming I'm looking at it like this, as more or less rectangular. So I might want to do something with this negative space over here or over here. So that's just kind of what I'm thinking and noticing as I go through and make this. And I like working like this because it is pretty intuitive. You can certainly go in with more of a plan if you want to, and that's just fine. But I like it because it's low stakes, and if you find something that you don't actually like or want to change, it's pretty easy to do that. And right now I'm liking the sort of dimension that's happening. I think I'd like to get this sort of magnifying lens raised a little bit, but still keep it flat. So I don't know if I have another piece of glass or not. But again, that is the nice thing about this way of working, is that if something doesn't seem like it's working the way you want to, you can just take it out and it doesn't have to be a big deal. All right, so I found another piece of plastic. I think that'll work a little bit better. Keeps it a little flatter, but still need something to prop it up with. And this is kind of the challenge when, for me anyway, when I'm making something like this, is how do I sort of keep the composition that I want and logistically tie things together and keep things from falling over without having it look like I've got a bunch of, just arbitrary things in there. So I need some sort of aesthetic prop for my glass plate here. So I really like what that's doing. You can see it right there, magnifying that sort of little pinwheel piece down there. So this is looking pretty good. I think I want to start snapping some photos and see where that goes. Again, I'm maybe envisioning doing this from top down, but there might also be some vantage points that are different that I'm not expecting quite yet that'll still work. So I'm going to be using my smartphone camera. I'm on an Android, so I'm going to use the manual camera app, and it's going to give me control over a lot of those things that we discussed in the digital photography video, setting the exposure, setting the white balance, and so on. Okay, so I think I've got some pretty good photos here. Obviously, if I were doing this on my own, not as a recording for you, I would probably spend a little more time, maybe do a few different arrangements, but just want to do this as a very basic example of one iteration of making a composition for this week one assignment. So I'm going to jump on the computer and we'll take a look at some of these images together. Okay, so I've gone ahead and transferred my image files from my camera to my computer. Of course, depending on the type of camera you're using, the way that you do this will differ. So you might have a memory card that comes out of the camera and inserts into your computer. You might attach your camera by USB or your phone by USB. In my case, I use Dropbox, which is a file syncing service that will copy my files from my camera to my computer over the internet. You could also use something like Google Drive. So one way or the other, you want to get your photos onto the computer and take a look through them. So you can see I've got a bunch here. I've already gone through and taken a look at these. I think we've got a range of some that are looking really good. Others that, maybe the exposure is too bright or too dark. The composition is not as good as it could be, or something else is going on with the photo. And while we are going to get to making adjustments to images, in this assignment, we're really more concerned with being able to work the camera, being able to set exposure. So I want you to focus on getting a good exposure that doesn't need editing. Later on, we'll get into editing. So I can see like some of these kind of interesting, a little too high contrast for what I'm looking at. I think some focus issues here. So like this is a little bit blurry, and not that everything necessarily needs to be in focus, but the focus should be working to make the image more engaging, more interesting. So you can see this one is maybe a little bit underexposed. It's a little too dark. I ended up doing probably 3 rounds of photographing my construction here, and that was mostly due to the fact that I was using natural lighting. So I set it up next to a big window, and I was kind of having to wait around until I got some good lighting that wasn't too harsh, too high contrast, but was still bright enough to get some good exposures. So I can see here, this is way too dark, way underexposed. This one's a little bit better, so there's a nice range. This corner is pretty bright. This central part of the image is a little too dark. So really the main point is don't be afraid to go back and rephotograph. Take more photos than you think you will need. I think I'm narrowing it down here to probably one of these three. I really like this. It's nice and bright. I get some good range of focus. There's enough going on here to where probably the wasp nest is the most important element, but there's enough interaction. So it's not one thing sort of taking all of the focus away from everything else. There's some good layering here and some good points of interest. I also feel like it might be a tie between this one as well. And kind of for similar reasons. It's enough to give you a composition. It's enough to sort of take it out of the space of just being a bunch of stuff on a table. Okay, so that's an overview of doing the week 1 assignment.